In the beginning of Chapter 1 of Terminally Ill Genius Dark Knight, we see that it's a very dark night. The scene suggests an intense battle is underway, and everyone is urging to take down the opposing team quickly. Our protagonist is depicted fighting there, defeating all the opponents with great strength. The adversaries our protagonist is fighting are referred to as knights, and they all come to defeat our protagonist. Our protagonist employs powerful techniques, defeating all the knights in a formidable manner. As the protagonist nearly defeats all the knights, they stand alone, visibly injured. They declare that they have defeated all of them, but suddenly, someone arrives. It's not clear whether it's a guy or a girl, and they ask our protagonist why they did this. They inquire about the circumstances that led our protagonist to make a deal with the devil and why they betrayed Nox Renfar. It is then revealed that the name of our protagonist is Nox Van Nafar. Now, our protagonist stands, looking defiant, and says, "What did you say, betrayal?" The person confirms, "Yes, you heard absolutely right. Why did you betray us?" Our protagonist argues that, in their opinion, it wasn't them, but rather the other person who betrayed them. The person insists, "Stop arguing and just tell me, when did you become so broken?" Our protagonist reflects, where did all this start? It was a beginning, a crash landing. The narrative then transitions to a flashback where we learn that a screen opens in front of a PC, indicating the completion of the first part of the game in a lunatic. Our protagonist, Nox Van Nafar, is revealed to be playing this game on their PC. They comment, "All right, this is not even too bad. I have passed the first level, and this time, I have also got a bunch of items." The room is filled with burnt cigarettes, and our protagonist says, "Okay, I have now completed clearing the hidden quest. Now, I am a bit satisfied." After that, the progress meter reveals, "It doesn't matter to me at all that I will die after a month." We are shown a flashback of 2 years ago, where our protagonist goes to see a doctor. The doctor informs him that the patient, Yu Chen by the wise guys, whose name is now Yu Chen, the one you saw earlier. Full details about him will be revealed later. The doctor says that Yu Chen is now Yu Chen, and you have to accept this fact. In another scene, Yu Chen is in another hospital, and there the doctor tells him that you have come from XX University Hospital, right? You have already been to 2 or 3 hospitals, and the 2 your semen tests have been done, and the results have also come the same, but you have to accept these results. Now, we can only do this much for you, that we can give you some pain relief medicines, as much as you can take, so that you can spend the rest of your life well. After that, a flashback of 2 years later, our protagonist says, "It's been 2 years since already too, and now my death is very close." As soon as he says this, our protagonist starts coughing, and as he coughs, blood starts coming out of his mouth. Our protagonist says, "Am I going to die very soon? I think the end result will not change at all. Just because I am thinking about it, thinking, there will be no benefit at all. If death is written in my fate, then I will die." After this, our protagonist turns on his phone, and a message comes, "You have an appointment, so show up quickly." The protagonist says, "I don't have anyone to talk to. These messages are bothering me. No one has talked to me about my illness even once. I also have a problem of memory loss, along with many other problems. I don't have anyone to talk to. In my current situation, I can't go anywhere." And then, some papers are laid out on his table, which reveals that our protagonist is suffering from the last stage of cancer. "So, my brother, think about it. I mean, the guy won't survive." After that, he gets all furious, tearing apart all the reports. Suddenly, in front of his PC, his game restarts, and an option appears saying, "Do you want to play a new game?" Our protagonist says, "Apart from dying, I can't do anything else, so I guess I'll have to do this." And then he starts the game. After that, the system asks, "What name do you want for your character in the game?" He types in Cal. Now, guys, in this game, You can also decide the characteristics of your character. So our guy says, what type of character traits should I give to my character? The protector says, I want to give my character 2 traits, one main sensitivity genius and the other ship and combat genius. Then the system comes up and says that if you choose 2 or more genius traits, you'll face a penalty. So, choose only one trait to avoid penalties. In the negative trait options, our protector goes for terminal ill option. Guys, terminal ill is a situation where the person is on the brink of death, meaning a type of lethal death, and to put it plainly, a disease that will definitely kill you. Our protector says, I am terminal ill, so I had given the same characteristic to my character. Then, an option comes up. Do you want to start your game with your chosen character? Our protector hits the option wise not, and as soon as our protagonist presses that option, he sees formations forming around him, and suddenly, everything becomes light, so much so that the light becomes so intense that he slowly stops seeing everything, and his eyes start to blur. He says, is this my death? Am I going to die? We are shown that while all this is happening, an option appears on the PC that the creation of your character has been successful. At that moment, our protagonist, in his mind, was saying that he felt like death is something that happens by our own choice, and he really wanted to die in a good way. But in the end, what is happening to me? Am I really dying? Suddenly, an option appears on the PC. The name of the character has been forcibly changed, and then when our protector opens his eyes, he sees that he is in a completely different place with a completely different body. As he gets up, he is in absolute shock and says, why does this place feel like I've seen it somewhere? Why are memories of this place coming to me? Could it be that I've become the worst character, named Nox? It means I have actually entered this game. After that, an in-game text pops up, and then I crash land into the game. Then we find out that our protector in this game, our Nox Van Rinfire, belongs to the Inner Lunatics' 3rd Dark Rin family, and our protagonist, who is our protagonist, belongs to the Refer family, the youngest son, and he has a total of 5 brothers. We learn that this Nifer family always gives birth to talented children. In this family, all the children are highly talented in magic and swordsmanship, but our Nox Jennifer is just a non-talented child. Sorry, in this family, we find out that our Nox, who is a Nifer, came to this resident world because of the lack of his talent, and he signed a contract with the devil who has been banned. Because of this, Nox Rene Tilda Copyright Far became the worst villain in the entire Lunatics story. Now, guys, I have told you about the Nifer family. This voiceover was from our author, and he summarized the story in a nutshell. After that, the scene shifts to our Rene Tilda Copyright Far, and over him, he says, have I become Nox? Easy to dream. We find out that in front of him, his system opens, revealing that his name is Nox Van Jennifer. He is a male, 14 years old, a human, and his main element is darkness. Now, after that, our guy says that he also has a status window, and then when he looks at his stats, he sees that his stats are very low. He says, what is wrong with my stats? I only have 2 stamina, and he sees that his negative trait is terminal illness, curse of the weak, frequency, hands and feet, and Poseidon. He says, is this the character I customized at that time? He says he doesn't know why he did that at the time, or that he didn't know he was coming to this world. But whatever it is, he wanted to create a character just like him. In terminal ill, he wanted a character who is dying and not dependent on anyone. He didn't know that he would actually become this character. Now, in front of him, the system appears again, and it tells him that there is an unread mail in his mailbox. Would he like to check it? Nox says, what an unread mail? And then, as soon as he opens it, the mail says, hey, Yu-chan. No, it should be Nox. Nox says to him, how do you know me? How do you know my original name? Yu-chan is a name given to me by my parents, but I don't know where my parents used to live because at that time, I was a child and I don't remember those memories. Then, after that, Nox says, is it possible that he knows about my past that I don't remember? Then, after that, the screen tells him, "Hey, long time no see," and as soon as Anox hears this, he gets very excited. Then the screen tells him, "You did very well in the last 2 years, you deserved to come here. Welcome back." Anox says the screen seems to be suggesting that the world he used to live in was not reality, but he feels that the place he has come to know is also not reality. Finally, he wonders what nonsense is happening with him. Then, the system says that it can't tell him much about his identity, but it will definitely help him. Our protagonist, asks, "What help, after all?" Then, the system reminds him that he needs to go to the Ideon Academy, increase his power to go there, survive that to come to the main story in A Tellest, and find out everything he wants to know. All the secrets are hidden there. After this, Anox says, "Hey, wait, tell me how all this will end?" But at that moment, the system disappears. Then, Anox sees that he is in front of a mirror, and he says that his current body has migrated to the final boss of the game called In a Lunatic Mind. And then, he starts thinking about what the system said about staying like the main character in the story and says that it doesn't matter how he does everything, even the end of the day result will be that he will die. He says that even if Linear Lunatic is a reality, he shouldn't give up on recovering his memories here. Then, he says that he has come too close to the main story, so he has to come even closer. "And when I recover my lost memories, I will find the point of contact inside this game, and then I will survive here very well." He says that he wants to become the biggest villain here, and for that, whatever I have to do, I will definitely do it. But here, I will definitely become a villain. He says that if I think about it, not much has changed with me here because even in reality, I was very sick, and I am still the same. 2 years ago, when I lost my memory, then after that, I became a terminal ill patient, and there was no countdown for my death. Every second was bringing me closer to my death. My entire life was spent in this fear that I might die at any moment. Only one thing has changed, and that is backdrop, meaning the entire scenario that was in the world where I was earlier, has now come from to another world. But the world I have come to is also very familiar to me. Then, he asks the system about today's date. The system tells him that today is the 12th of February 1812. He says that if we look at the rules, then my death has also changed. So now, should I start my 28th attempt here? And guys, this is the 28th attempt here. He says because he has already tried 27 times before, but he played the virtual game. Now, he is inside the game for the 28th time. After that, as he moves towards a place and opens the door, suddenly he feels a lot of pain in his hands. Then, a voice inside informs him about his negative characteristics, causing a spent twist of the pen in his spent fist due to excessive misalignment. "So, if you want to recover from this, you'll have to stay here," says What Da. And then, in anger, as he exits, he collides with a servant carrying a plate in his hand, causing it to fall and break. She immediately, embarrassed, says, "Hey young master, Nox, please forgive me." Looking at her, Nox says, "I recognize this face. Brown hair with light golden brown eyes. Her name is Rona." Rona is urgently saying, "Please master, forgive me. Ignore her. The glass in your hand is all my fault. Please forgive me." Meanwhile, Nox is thinking, "Oh, now I understand. I am the biggest trash in this family." Nox finally asks how he lived here. Now Nox is our main protagonist inside him, but he is talking to the previous Nox, in whom our protagonist has now arrived. Then the girl says, "But young master, where are you going so early in the morning?" He tells her, "I'm going to the training hall," and everyone is surprised to hear this because they wonder how he is going to train today, as they had no idea that another guy had entered. After that, the one who becomes his protagonist says, "All right, Rona, come, follow me." As they walk, Rona is thinking to herself why it feels like she's going there to get beaten with a wooden sword from the woodland sort. Now, in front of the hall, which is our protagonist, he is thinking to himself that he has to survive here. "When I stood in front of the dead door, I was completely and more certain at that time. I have no desire to die at all now, so I have to survive here. He says, whatever sarcasm is inside me, like illness, etc., has to be removed from within, and it's not that these things cannot be removed from within me. I am a pro, and I have finished this game 27 times, and I know everything about the hidden secrets of this game. After that, he calls up his characteristic window, where he finds out that Inner Lunatic is a game of demonic and divine conflict among vampires, and the main focus is on vampires. He asks, what is special about Inner Lunatic? His answer is that he has various parts of growth with countless combinations of characteristics, and there are also many low-rank characteristics here. He also learns that genius characteristics can only be applied once. After that, the protagonist tells him that he has to take the help of genius characteristics to come to the top suddenly. The protagonist has currently acquired 2 characteristics that are genius, one of which is sword and martial arts techniques, making us highly proficient in using it, which helps us reach higher levels. The other technique is mana sensing genius technique, which increases our magic sensitivity even more and maximizes efficiency, meaning we can circulate. He says that along with this, there are many other useful things for us, but I only needed 2, such as the Eye of Discontent technique, which allows us to see the status window, not only our own but also others, and another technique called Master of Acting technique, which allows us to perform powerful acting in front of someone. The protagonist says that since I came from the real world, I don't need this technique because I already have these skills developed inside me. He says that all of this is not a problem, but the main problem is negative characteristics, and then he checks his system to find out the illness he currently has, terminal illness. If he doesn't do anything about it, his lifespan here is only 1 year, and he says that it is actually the most concerning thing for him. Along with this, he realizes that he has some other negative characteristics, and he says that I have to resolve all of them one by one. Meanwhile, Rona tells him that we have almost reached the training hall, but do you really want to go inside? Without giving him any answer, he opens the door of the training hall, determined to confront the first obstacle, the Curse of the Weak. This curse afflicted users from birth, reducing their growth rate by half and making them twice as susceptible to enemy debuffs. As Nox continued his sword practice, a profound sense of despair washed over him. No matter how much he pondered the situation, he could only reach one conclusion: he was doomed. Exhausted and lying on the ground, Nox struggled to catch his breath. The realization that he couldn't swing the sword more than 10 times struck him deeply. He lamented the immense difficulty imposed by the Curse of the Weak. Looking around, Nox found solace in the abundance of weapons available. This wealth of weaponry was a testament to the Rainhafer family's origins, centered around the sword. Known as the High House of the Blade in Darkness, the Rainhafer family had earned this title through their mastery of imbuing attribute magic into their dark blades. With great proficiency, they could slash through their enemies. All of this was made possible by the legendary Commander's Blade, also known as the Tyrannical Blade of Darkness. This ancestral sword had been passed down through generations, carrying on the tradition and legacy of the Rainhafer family. Nox contemplated the advantages of being part of a noble family. Setting aside his prowess and swordsmanship, one of the greatest benefits was the abundance of wealth. With a delighted expression, he admired the Rainhafer family's substantial fortune. As one of the prominent noble families in the story, their wealth was so significant that even their seemingly useless young son, Nox, had enough money to sustain a life without ever having to work. Nox believed that his father, To, likely didn't concern himself with how wisely Nox managed his finances. After all, Nox didn't possess that kind of character. As the youngest son of a noble family, his character archetype was clear. With his legs trembling, Nox managed to stand up. He remembered Rona's fearful behavior and her plea not to involve her in anything strange. A few minutes earlier, Rona had brought a wooden sword and a towel, informing Nox that they were ready for him. However, She couldn't help but wonder if he truly intended to engage in exercise. Knox realized that there was no one around, in motion for Rona to come closer. Rona displayed a frightened demeanor, questioning his intentions and expressing concern that he might hit her. Knox, caught up in his frustration, exclaimed and asked her what she was talking about. He then grasped Rona's ear, pulling her closer, and whispered something in her ear. After hearing Knox, Rona shouted in surprise, questioning his plans. She looked at him, expressing her disbelief that his ideas were merely garbage. However, Knox commanded her to figure it out and sharply told her to be quiet. Rona replied with a trembling voice, acknowledging his request. As Rona left to retrieve the requested items, she couldn't help but think to herself that the young master hadn't changed a bit. Meanwhile, Knox contemplated the time it would take for Rona to complete her task. Hoping that everything would be ready by tomorrow, he poured himself some tea, pondering a solution to his curse and the need to increase his stamina. Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Rodwell Dernark, the head butler. Knox was taken aback as he recognized Rodwell, who held a significant position as one of the main managers of the Rainhafer estate. Rodwell served as an advisor to Knox's father, Theo von Rainhafer, who was also the family head. Knox realized that dealing with Rodwell wouldn't be as straightforward as with others, since he held a position of authority within the family. Knox pondered the encounter, considering it a potentially significant challenge. He wondered if Rodwell had noticed something unusual happening and contemplated his own means of handling the situation. Knox activated his positive trait of Master of Acting and questioned Rodwell's presence, stating that the head butler should be serving the family head. Head butler Rodwell informed Knox that he had received orders to share some news with him. Knox curiously inquired about the nature of the news. The head butler revealed that Knox was instructed to participate in tonight's dinner. Knox, unfamiliar with the family and the situation, hesitated at the idea of having dinner with the family head. He contemplated the request, realizing his lack of knowledge about the family dynamics. Knox responded to the head butler, expressing his reluctance to attend the dinner. Head butler internally pondered the master's intentions behind ordering young Master Knox to participate in the dinner. Head butler then reported that the lady of the Stilliner family had arrived and was seeking night training. He emphasized that if Knox refused to participate, it would likely anger the family head. Knox let out a sigh, acknowledging the circumstances. He understood the importance of following his father's orders and reluctantly agreed to attend the dinner. Head butler observed Knox with a questioning gaze and thought aloud that something was off about him that day. Knox, somewhat defensive, asked if there was something the head butler wanted to say. The head butler acknowledged Knox's unusual behavior, noting that Knox had never shown much interest in wielding a blade before. He inquired about the reason behind Knox's decision to visit the practice hall on his own. Knox, with a stern expression, firmly asserted his independence and authority, warning the head butler not to overstep his boundaries as a mere butler. He made it clear that his actions and intentions were his own to decide. Taken aback, the head butler apologized, recognizing that he had crossed the line. As Knox walked away, the head butler's gaze was filled with questioning thoughts, realizing the need to report this encounter to the family head. Inside his room, Knox closed the door and took a moment to catch his breath. He reflected on the unexpected confrontation, feeling relieved that possession didn't activate. Knox shifted his focus to the mention of the young lady from the Stilliner family, wondering why she was present in their household. During the dinner, Knox found himself being mocked by twin brothers, Hartz and Alan. Alan expressed surprise and disbelief that Knox had shown up, indicating that he wouldn't enjoy the meal because of it. Hartz questioned whether Knox still had regrets about being part of the family, to which Alan agreed. Alan directly addressed Knox, expressing his disbelief at seeing him there and accusing him of inappropriate behavior with one of the maids. Hartz joined in, stating that Knox was a lost cause. Despite the mocking, Knox remained calm, recognizing that he hadn't done anything to warrant such treatment. At that moment, Theo von Rainhafer, the family head of the Rainhafer family and Knox's father, entered the scene. Knox acknowledged his presence, aware of his role within the family. Following Theo's arrival, A beautiful girl with red hair introduced herself as Talia von Stunner. The family had mentioned that Talia had requested night practice and would be spending time at their estate, urging everyone to greet her warmly. Nox gazed at Talia and contemplated her significance. In the game In a Lunatic, she was the hero, the character who opposed the future villain, Nox. Nox recognized that in the near future, it would be Talia who would eventually stab him in the chest with a sword. Family head To acknowledged Nox's presence at the dinner and suggested that, since everyone was gathered, they should proceed with the meal. During the dinner, Nox observed Hartz and Alan engaged in a discussion. Hartz proposed to their father, To, that it was time to decide the next person to enter Albion Academy. To considered the suggestion and agreed that it was indeed the appropriate time to make that decision. Albion Academy held great importance within the game In a Lunatic, serving as the place where pupils faced various challenges and fought demons, forming the main storyline. Nox realized that attending the academy was crucial for him. It would allow him to gather his own allies while following the overall structure of the story. However, family head To clarified that Albion Academy only permitted 3 individuals from each family to attend. This limitation aimed to restrict the influence of the nobles. To mentioned that he had already used 2 slots for his first and second sons, leaving the Rainhafer family with just 1 more entrance ticket available for the academy. Nox listened to the family head's announcement and contemplated the importance of obtaining the remaining entrance ticket to Albion Academy. He understood that he needed to do whatever it took to secure that ticket before he could focus on forming alliances. Nox spoke up and concluded that the family head was proposing a fight between the brothers. This took the family head by surprise as he hadn't expected Nox to be the first to react. Confirming Nox's assumption, the family head declared that a duel would take place in the practice hall 1 month from now to determine the next attendee. The duel would follow their family traditions for such decisions. Hartz took the opportunity to mock Nox, urging him to stay quiet to avoid embarrassing himself. Alan joined in belittling Nox and stating that someone like him who had never wielded a sword stood no chance against them. Nox calmly took a sip of his wine and responded to Alan's taunts, stating that they could discuss it after he emerged victorious. Alan expressed disbelief in Nox's abilities, but Nox remained focused. He understood that the upcoming duel was another trial he needed to face to secure the entrance ticket. He refused to be swayed by the taunts and insults directed at him. Confident in his own abilities, Nox looked ahead and boldly declared that he would be the one to attend LDN Academy. This surprised the family head and further infuriated Hartz and Alan. Talia, the young lady from the Stunner family, chuckled at Nox's declaration and commented on his confidence. Nox glanced at her but internally felt a sense of unease, realizing that he might have drawn the attention of someone he shouldn't have. Inside the family head's office, To acknowledged that something had indeed changed about Nox. As reported by the head butler, To pondered the cause of this change, wondering if Nox had been possessed by a demon. Regardless, he acknowledged that Nox had captured his attention. To instructed the head butler, Rodwell, to continue keeping a close eye on Nox. The family head was curious about the transformation in Nox and wanted to understand the reasons behind it. Meanwhile, Max was running at the practice hall, sweating and panting heavily. One of the maids commented on Nox's frequent visits to the practice hall. Another maid mentioned the upcoming duel in 1 month, sparking curiosity among them about Nox's sudden dedication to physical training. Nox overheard their conversation, wondering why he was able to pick out their words so clearly and questioning if he had a special trait. At that moment, he received a system message indicating a slight increase in his stamina stat. Nox expressed disappointment at the small increment and reflected on the significance of stamina for him. He recognized that his low stamina was his greatest obstacle and a hindrance to unlocking his full potential with the traits swordsmanship and combat genius. Nox understood that the requirement to utilize the trait was to have his stamina stat reach 4. However, due to the curse of the week, it had taken him a month to increase his stamina by only 1.9 points. Max felt frustrated with the curse of the week, a trait that reduced his growth rate by half. Despite putting in a lot of effort, He had only managed to increase his stamina by a small amount, and the terminal illness trait further hindered his progress. Nox realized that he needed to exert 4 times as much effort compared to others just to see minimal improvements. The difficulty of his situation weighed heavily on him. However, Nox decided to set aside those concerns for the time being. Just then, Rona arrived pushing a moving tray filled with the materials Nox had requested the previous day. Nox acknowledged her arrival, realizing that she was faster than he had anticipated. With the supplies now available, he felt confident about making progress. Contemplating how to reach a stamina level of 4, Nox reassured himself that there were no issues. He believed that his knowledge would allow him to overcome any obstacles. Curious about the purpose of the materials, Rona questioned why Nox needed them, expressing concern about their dangerous nature and their expensive cost. She pointed out that the scroll seemed to be the only useful item among them. Nox simply replied that people didn't know how to use those materials effectively, implying that their usefulness was hidden from others. As Rona looked at him with a questioning expression, Nox picked up a bottle of elixir and drank it in one go. Panicking, Rona shouted that it was poison. Sweat covered Nox's face as he acknowledged the potency of the poison. A system notification appeared, indicating that Nox had consumed the poison of the 3-headed Gorgon, and his health would temporarily increase by 1.5 times. It also informed him that his death counter had started, with 9 minutes and 59 seconds remaining until death. As Rona grew increasingly panicked, she exclaimed that she would call the head butler for assistance. However, Nox urged her to wait and proceeded to eat the core. Ignoring her pleas, Rona's worry intensified as she exclaimed that the core was not meant for consumption. A system notification appeared, indicating that Nox had consumed the core of the golem and would slowly be petrified as a result. Another notification followed, stating that a hidden piece had been activated, and the poison of the 3-headed Gorgon was reacting with the golem's core. Nox was pleased with the results and thought that his plan was working perfectly. The golem's core was originally used to petrify people or increase their defense quickly or to create artificial golems. However, when combined with the 3-headed Gorgon poison, it had a special effect. Notifications continued to appear, indicating that a special effect had been activated and the poison of the 3-headed Gorgon had been diluted, causing the negative trait Curse of the Weak to disappear. Nox was ecstatic as the curse that had plagued him was now gone. However, Rona, with tears in her eyes, looked at Nox and expressed her concern, fearing that he might soon die. Ignoring her worries, Nox suddenly began to unbutton his shirt, causing Rona to cover her eyes in embarrassment and exclaim in shock. After unbuttoning his shirt further, Nox poured an elixir bottle onto his head, prompting a series of notifications to appear. The Dew of the Remembering Fairy countered the petrification effects of the golem's core, and a hidden piece was activated. Nox felt a surge of satisfaction as his plan unfolded precisely as intended. The notification informed him that the Blessing of Growth, a temporary trait, was granted through the interaction of the Dew and the golem's core. This blessing would double his stat growth until his stamina reached 5. Left with only the scroll, Nox picked it up and activated the Rapid Stamina Growth scroll, with another notification confirming his action. This scroll would double his stamina growth rate. As Nox contemplated the results, he realized that he had successfully eliminated the curse, and with the Blessing of Growth mitigating the debuffs from the terminally ill trait, coupled with the effects of the scroll, his current growth rate should be twice that of most people. This meant he should be able to increase his stamina stat at a much faster pace. Suddenly, Rona leapt onto Nox, causing him to momentarily lose his balance. Concern filled her teary eyes as she questioned his well-being. Nox, slightly annoyed at her interruption, initially demanded a towel but softened when he saw her distress. With a reassuring smile, he assured Rona that he was fine. She continued to worry, suggesting he should rest and consider calling the head butler for assistance. Nox once again reassured Rona, insisting that he was all right. Curious about his next course of action, Rona inquired about his plans. Nox simply replied with a single word, "Run." In that moment, Nox and Rona sprinted through the practice hall, their actions capturing the attention of Talia, who stood nearby observing them. Talia, who had been closely watching Nox, couldn't comprehend why someone seemingly weak like him would accept the match against his brothers. Her maid, Emma, tried to caution Talia against staring at Nox and reminded her of proper etiquette. However, Talia interrupted Emma, expressing her frustration and disbelief at Nox's lack of sword skills and refusal to accept help from the other Knights of Rainhafer. Talia couldn't shake off her annoyance, though she couldn't fully understand why she was so bothered by Nox's situation when she believed he would simply end up getting beaten up within a month. Despite her thoughts, Talia's annoyance persisted. Determined to address the matter, Talia walked towards the practice hall, informing her maid Emma that she would be right back. Approaching Nox as he rested, Talia introduced herself, stating her name. Nox was taken by surprise at her approach and wondered why she had sought him out. He asked her what she wanted, noting that he had heard her name before. Talia, feeling somewhat flustered by Nox's cold attitude, thought to herself that he must have been taken aback by her beauty. She confronted Nox, questioning his confidence in being able to defeat his brothers, and asked if that was the reason why he accepted the match. She further inquired whether he truly believed that he could defeat his brother by simply running away like this. Talia went on to offer her assistance, expressing her willingness to help him. However, Nox calmly rejected her offer, telling her to get lost and showing no interest in her help. Talia was taken aback by Nox's response and exclaimed in disbelief, expressing her indignation at being treated this way when she was offering her support. On the sidelines, Rona observed the exchange and thought that if Nox continued to speak in such a manner, it would make girls dislike him. Unwilling to persuade Nox any further, Talia turned to walk away from the practice hall, clearly upset with his refusal and dismissive attitude. Nox, using his insight ability on Talia, gained access to her stat window, allowing him to learn more about her abilities and traits. He observed that Talia possessed impressive stats, particularly in terms of stamina, which surpassed that of most grown males. While her potential may not match that of the 3 sword masters or the 4 great mages on the continent, Nox recognized that she had the potential to reach their level and effectively combat demons with her fire attribute magic. Nox also knew that in the near future, Talia's fire attribute magic would awaken to white flames and be used to burn the demonized version of himself. Understanding the significance of making Talia his ally at this point, as it would drastically alter the future events of the story, Nox pondered how to navigate the original story while avoiding his own demise. Nox questioned whether it was possible to maintain a good relationship with someone who would eventually be responsible for his death. 1 month later, Talia walked through the hallway, reflecting on the praise she had received for her quick learning abilities and the expectations tied to the still Rainhafer family's talent. However, she couldn't help but feel inferior compared to her sister's exceptional talent. Talia questioned her own potential and wondered if she could ever become a knight. Reminding herself of the qualities and principles a knight must possess, she contemplated the path she needed to follow. Knights should never be consumed by greed, maintain a frugal lifestyle, and be willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. In addition, they must master the art of swordsmanship and adhere to proper form to become true knights. Talia pondered the possibility of Nox being able to defeat his brothers, who had trained for years solely by focusing on cardio exercises. She expressed her doubt, believing it to be unlikely for him to succeed. The next day arrived, and Nox and Alan stood in the center of the ring, surrounded by a crowd of spectators eagerly awaiting the official duel that would determine who would earn the right to enter Albion Academy. Fistula, the first wife of a family head, was also present at the scene. Meanwhile, the head butler, standing nearby, overheard the family head calling out to him. The family head inquired about the butler's thoughts on the outcome of the duel. After considering young Master Alan's past performances, the head butler stated that it was highly likely that Alan would emerge victorious. The family head agreed, assuming the same outcome. However, The head butler couldn't help but wonder if the family head had different expectations. Having once walked the path of a knight alongside the family head, the butler understood that the art of the blade could be intricate or straightforward, and the level of skill and dedication determined one's proficiency. There was only one way to surpass someone previously ahead and force them to kneel at the insurmountable wall of overwhelming talent. The butler pondered whether young Master Knox possessed such innate talent. Interrupting the butler's thoughts, the family head spoke, acknowledging that the possibility might not be zero and that the youngest born with Rainhafer blood might possess the talent of a sword emperor. As Knox stood in the duel grounds, he received a notification indicating that his trait swordsmanship and combat genius was inactive. Frustration washed over him as he contemplated his seemingly unlucky streak and questioned whether his luck stat was actually negative. Despite his efforts, he couldn't reach a stamina stat of 4. A few days earlier, while Knox was running, he received multiple notifications activating his trait effects and gradually increasing his stamina stat by 0.1. Now, his stamina had reached 3.8. Rona, who ran alongside him, expressed her exhaustion and questioned whether she had to continue running with him. Knox, wiping sweat from his face, replied that it wouldn't be fun without her and jokingly mentioned who would take care of him if she didn't. Rona, with teary eyes, suspected that she heard him say something else. Knox then handed her a towel and assigned her another task, to which Rona responded with a pouting face. Playfully, Knox accused Rona of cursing him in her mind, but she denied it and accidentally bit her tongue in the process. Knox chuckled at the thought of Rona having good stamina and contemplated using his insight ability to view her stats. To his surprise, Rona's stamina stat was 4.5. surpassing his own despite his dedicated training. Knox was astonished by the strength of the Rainhafer family, where even a maid was stronger than an average man. Rona reminded Knox that it was already evening and suggested he rest before the duel. Knox, panting heavily, felt the pressure of time and thought that he didn't have enough time to increase his stamina. Back at the duel ring, Alan addressed Knox and proposed that he should give up. Despite Knox being considered the shame of their family, Alan expressed hesitation in beating him too severely. Knox responded, stating that Alan didn't seem to want him to give up. Alan shifted his attention to Talia, the daughter of the still in her family, and expressed his desire to impress her. He believed that Knox would assist him in achieving that goal. However, Knox expressed uncertainty about whether it was a wise decision. Observing Alan's stamina stat of 8, Knox realized that he couldn't defeat him using ordinary methods and contemplated alternative approaches. As the referee announced the duel between Knox and Alan for the admission ticket to Albion Academy, he emphasized that both of them must accept whatever the results may be, and objections would not be tolerated. Knox felt nervous, realizing that everything hinged on the duel. His main objective was to find his memories and discover the sender of the letter, as he knew that after the 1-year grace period, his life would be in danger. The referee asked one last time if both of them were ready, and then he announced the beginning of the duel. Alan initiated the attack with a swift sword strike aiming to strike Knox, but with agile dexterity, Knox evaded the blow by gracefully sidestepping. Reacting swiftly, Alan followed up with a forceful kick intending to overpower Knox. However, Knox skillfully blocked the kick with his sword, although the impact still pushed him backward. Impressed by Knox's defense, Alan acknowledged his opponent's skill and relentlessly pressed on with his assault, leaving Knox on the defensive. Amidst the intense clash, Knox recognized the consistent rule of the damned interlunatic game: he is surrendering everything upon defeat but regaining control over his destiny upon victory. Suddenly, a notification appeared, indicating an incremental increase of 0.1 in Knox's stamina stat. A smile adorned Knox's face as he witnessed this development, realizing that triumph in the duel held the potential to grant him all he desired. Observing Knox's smile, Alan jokingly questioned if he had struck Knox's head one too many times. Determined to continue his relentless attacks in hopes of pacifying his opponent, Alan launched a ferocious attack, nearly causing Knox to lose his balance. It was at that moment that Fistula, Alan's mother attentively observed the fight, confident that her son would be the final child of the family to gain entry into Albion Academy. In the midst of the duel, Alan's ferocious attack nearly caused Nox to lose his balance. At that moment, Fistula overheard a disapproving comment, diverting her attention to its source, the family head. His countenance betrayed disappointment as he had eagerly anticipated witnessing Nox's transformation, only to find his current performance underwhelming. Inwardly, Fistula harbored aspirations for the day when the true extent of her power would be revealed to the family. Expressing his disappointment, the family head voiced his expectations, comparing the talents of Alan and Hearts to his firstborn son Garen, finding them lacking memories of his past prowess dominating opponents with overwhelming power while wielding the dark sword of domination filled his mind. Contemplating who would ultimately inherit that formidable weapon, the family head resolved to bring an end to the duel. Rising from his seat with determination on the duel ring, Nox received the message notifying him of an incremental increase of 0.1 in his stamina, swiftly followed by the activation of his innate trait of swordsmanship and combat genius. Overwhelmed with excitement, Nox burst into laughter, catching both Alan and the family head off guard. Nox then employed a skill, triggering a system message that confirmed the activation of the skill hour of the genius. Nox's thoughts raced as he recollected, as saying that distinguished geniuses and the talented each having their own unique time. In that moment, he believed that it was his time, a moment of genius. With the skill now active, Nox perceived the world around him decelerating as if time itself had slowed. This bestowed upon him a distinct advantage in the duel. While his adversary's movements appeared sluggish, his own actions quickened, enabling him to react swiftly and execute precise maneuvers. Fully utilizing this skill proved challenging, but with his innate trait swordsmanship and combat genius now activated, Nox wielded the skill with finesse. Seizing the opportunity, Nox unleashed a formidable assault against Alan, his strike powerful and unyielding. The force of the blow caused Alan's sword to be dislodged from his grip, leaving him defenseless. With victory within sight, Nox's determination intensified, firmly believing that he would emerge triumphant in the duel. As Alan's grip faltered, frustration burned in his eyes, directed at Nox. Nox, wearing a smug expression, met Alan's gaze with amusement, stating that the duel had been an enjoyable experience. Overwhelmed by his own vexation, Alan could only manage a bewildered exclamation. Nox's thoughts raced as he realized he couldn't afford to let his guard down. The skill he utilized had a limited duration of 5 minutes, urging him to conclude the battle within the time frame, regardless of the circumstances. Nox's face lit up with confidence as he addressed Alan and Hearts, revealing that he had been holding back until now. Finding their performance lackluster, he suggested a swift resolution, urging them to attack him simultaneously. The unexpected request from Nox left Alan and Hearts in a state of shock, their minds struggling to comprehend the situation. Nox then turned to the family head, seeking permission for a 2-on-1 battle against his brothers. The family head's expression reflected a mix of curiosity and doubt as he assessed Nox's demeanor. Meanwhile, Talia's voice trembled with concern as she whispered, questioning Nox's current actions and unable to fathom his motives. Observing Nox's newfound energy and determination, the family head sensed that something had changed about him. Intrigued, he decided to grant Nox's request, allowing this unconventional sparring scenario. Just then, Fistula rose from her seat, prepared to intervene, but her plea went unnoticed by the family head, who remained resolute in his decision. With a simple command, he signaled the commencement of the battle, setting the stage for what was to come. Alan retrieved his fallen sword from the ground, his movements driven by determination. Hearts, seething with annoyance and resentment toward Nox for humiliating them in front of their father, radiated anger. Nox stood before them, maintaining a serene smile, ready to confront them head-on. Hearts issued a warning, indicating that Nox should brace himself for what awaited him. Without further delay, both Alan and Hearts launched their assault on Nox simultaneously, their swords colliding with a resounding clash. The air crackled with intensity as the battle unfolded. Amidst the clash of steel, Alan, in a desperate attempt to strategize, gestured to Hartz, signaling for him to close in on Nox's left side. However, Hartz expressed his frustration and abruptly told Alan to keep quiet. Nox showcased remarkable skill, deftly defending against their relentless attacks, blocking and parrying with precision. In that moment, a message appeared before Nox, notifying him that the Hour of the Genius had granted its special effect, enhancing his proficiency in the Dark Family's low-grade swordsmanship. A smile crept onto Nox's face as he recognized the newfound clarity in his swordsmanship. Seizing the operating moment, Nox swiftly retaliated, countering their attack and landing a calculated strike on Alan's shoulder. Both Alan and Hartz, visibly exhausted, panted heavily, struggling to catch their breath. In contrast, Nox stood composed, seemingly unfazed by the physical toll of the battle. He observed their perplexed expressions, aware that they must be questioning how he had transformed from a symbol of family humiliation into this formidable adversary. Their silent exchange was interrupted by Nox's voice, reminding Alan and Hartz not to lose focus during their spar. Fueled by determination, Nox pressed on with his assault, finding joy in the act of wielding the sword itself, a smile spreading across his face. Nox's swift sword swing captured the attention of Talia, the family head, and others present, eliciting surprise from their wide-eyed expressions. Hartz, who bore the brunt of the attack, struggled to process the impossible feat unfolding before him. Despite his attempts to block, Hartz fell to the ground defeated. Alan and Hartz, both on their knees, expressed their frustration through gritted teeth. The referee responded with an affirmative nod, confirming Nox von Reinhafer as the triumphant combatant. With a formal announcement, the referee declared Nox's victory to the gathered audience. Consumed by anger, Alan clenched his fists in frustration, unable to accept the defeat. Nox released his grip on the sword and shifted his focus to the family head, who wore a content smile on his face. Expressing his gratitude, Nox respectfully bowed to the family head before announcing his departure. As Nox made his way towards the exit, Talia locked her gaze on him, her face displaying a determined expression. Realizing the urgency of the situation, she felt compelled to reach out to Nox without delay, her mind set on the necessity of an immediate conversation. Just as Nox stepped outside, a sudden bout of coughing overcame him. Glancing down at his hands, he discovered them stained with blood. Realization dawned upon him as he recognized that he had used the skill for a little too long. Nox was well aware of the significant flaw within the skill Hour of the Genius, so exceeding its allotted duration triggered a debuff called Recoil, which took a toll on him. Just then, a message materialized, confirming the repercussions of the skill's recoil. It revealed that his life had been diminished by a duration of 2 days and 17 hours. Nox comprehended the gravity of this debuff, understanding that it permanently reduced his lifespan and made him more vulnerable to illnesses. Taking a moment to collect his thoughts, Nox let out a relieved sigh, grateful that the recoil hadn't manifested in front of others. He acknowledged that if his condition had been exposed, his admission to the academy might have been jeopardized. However, his respite was short-lived as his attention was drawn to a voice calling out to him. Nox turned toward the source of the sound and found Talia standing there. Her inquiry pierced through the air as she asked if he had sustained any injuries during the spar. Nox's mind raced with worry as he realized Talia had discovered his condition. It troubled him deeply that she was the one who found out, and he couldn't let Theo uncover the truth about his abilities rebound. He pondered anxiously, searching for a way to handle the situation. Before Nox could utter a word, Talia interrupted him, expressing surprise at his victory in a sibling fight despite his frailty. Nox was taken aback, questioning her statement. In response, Talia blushed and confessed her misunderstanding. For the past month, she had seen Nox clumsily swinging a wooden sword, never witnessing him wield a real one. Assuming his triumph came from innate talent, she decided to inquire about his awakening and training of such skill. However, as the duels concluded, Talia noticed a change in Nox's demeanor when he was alone. Confused and concerned, she questioned herself about the true nature of his abilities in his current state. Inwardly, Talia came to a realization. She understood that Nox wasn't the worthless person rumors depicted him as. Instead, he had dedicated himself to hard work and training, going to great lengths to secure victory. Witnessing Nox coughing, worry enveloped Talia, and she reached out her hand to check on him. Nox swatted her hand away, stating his aversion to being touched. Internally, he felt embarrassed, realizing that his 2 years of gaming obsession had hindered his social skills. Furthermore, Milling Talia was a character who could kill and made it even more challenging to interact with her. She expressed regret for misjudging him and acknowledged that his portrayal as a worthless person might not have been his intention. She mentioned that Emma had taught her that people can make mistakes and their perceptions can change. Nox contemplated how to respond to Talia's genuine honesty. He recognized her sincerity, reflecting the qualities he had observed in her character within the game. Despite her noble qualities being the daughter of a proud and esteemed Duke family, it made it challenging for her to admit when she was wrong. Finally, Nox spoke, urging Talia not to disclose his bleeding condition to others if she held such a view of him. Talia confidently assured him that she would keep his secret. Nox observed her response and thought that maybe he didn't need to worry about others discovering his situation. Turning away, Nox walked off, instructing Talia to keep her promise. As Talia watched Nox's departing figure, her face flushed red with a mix of emotions. In the family head's office, the family head expressed his satisfaction with his earlier conjecture. He turned to the head butler and inquired about his opinion on Nox's talent. The head butler shared his views, initially struggling to understand why Nox allowed himself to be beaten. However, after observing other children of his age and young masters, the head butler concluded that Nox was the most exceptional among them. The family head agreed with the head butler's assessment and expressed suspicion that Nox might possess additional hidden talents. He directed the head butler to closely monitor all of Nox's actions, emphasizing the importance of their sole task, observing Nox regardless of his activities. The head butler acknowledged the order, pledging to fulfill his duties diligently. Inside Nox's residence, he received a message indicating the completion of the tutorial quest and his victory in the first fight. Nox realized that this world had become a reality while retaining game-like elements. Another message appeared announcing rewards for his achievements, including 3 free stat points. Nox was pleasantly surprised and exclaimed that he had hit the jackpot. However, his excitement waned quickly when he realized that despite a whole month of rigorous running, his stamina had only increased by 2 points. He expressed disappointment, suggesting they should have granted him these rewards much earlier. But the stat he needed to invest these points in wasn't stamina, it was luck. Nox opened his status window and allocated all 3 points into the luck stat, raising it from 7 to 10. He reasoned that luck was valuable, especially in the Interlunited game, as it was a stat that couldn't be easily increased through hard work. Nox, eager to test the value of his increased luck stat, received additional messages regarding benefits, including mass clear rewards or a random Gaka voucher and a one-time use skill confirmation voucher. Nox felt relieved that the benefit system was still in place. Appreciating the opportunities it provided, Nox eagerly decided to use the Gaka right away, and a Gaka machine materialized before him. Seeing it in person felt alien to him. Nox rotated the handle, hoping for a high-ranking reward. He remembered that with his high luck stat, there was a 95% chance of getting an intermediate rank or above. Knowing that basic ranks and those below were white, intermediate ranks were silver, and advanced ranks would be gold, with rainbow being the highest rank, Nox yearned for at least a gold or higher ranked reward. Its effect was that those with a lower status value than him would have all their stats reduced by 20%. Considering it a jackpot, Nox smiled at the fact that it was a debuff skill. However, he knew another reward awaited him. Nox then received a message asking if he would like to use the one-time use skill confirmation voucher. He knew the skill he would obtain from this voucher was already predetermined and one of the hidden pieces he needed to achieve his goal. He decided to save it for when Theo gathered all the siblings in the estate. Knox realized that it was almost time for Garin von Rainhafer, the second son of the Rainhafer family, to return to the estate after completing his night training. Knox acknowledged that he had to find the hidden piece and handle Garin, leaving no time for rest. However, he felt relieved that he probably didn't need to worry about Talia anymore, considering her character in the promise she made. He believed there was no reason for her to approach him again. To his surprise, the very next day, he found Talia standing in front of him. Knox questioned why she was there after they had settled everything the day before. Talia, looking down, spoke in a low voice, but Knox couldn't understand her, so he asked her to clarify. Talia then looked up at Knox with a confident expression and asked how he had become so strong so quickly and how she could become stronger too. Knox remained silent at the question Talia had asked him. He decided to walk past her, saying that she had secretly watched and trained for a month, which caused disbelief in Talia. She blushed at the word secretly. She yelled out to Knox to wait for her and to at least spar with her or tell her how he trained. As he walked away, Knox tried to remember what Talia's reason was, recalling that she was a character who wanted to be recognized by her sister. He then turns to her, telling her that before asking him about things such as training or sparring, she should think of her talent first. As he stares at her, Talia remains speechless, gazing at Knox for the words he had just said. Knox thought to himself that he had never comforted anyone before and wondered what to say. He turns around once more to tell Talia not to compare herself to others before making his exit. Talia, with her mouth still open, closes it as she blushes at the words Knox had said to her, making her think deeply as he just left her there. As he continued on his path, Knox felt a flicker of relief, hoping that Talia would no longer be a distraction on his journey. Arriving at a familiar gathering place, Knox found his two brothers and their father, the esteemed family head, awaiting him. It was the Rainhafer family's renowned barn where the finest horses in the entire continent were raised. The purpose of their gathering was soon revealed. Each sibling would choose a horse, a lifelong companion. Knox's heart raced with anticipation. He understood the significance of this moment, knowing that horses were considered sacred creatures within the family and the world they inhabited. Whether one chose the path of a mage or a knight, selecting a horse was an essential step. Interrupting his thoughts, the family head announced that Knox, as the victor of the duel, would have the first choice. The weight of that responsibility settled upon Knox as he knew he had to choose wisely. Entering the barn, Knox's eyes scanned the assortment of horses before him. Adorable creatures stood before him, but he remained focused on finding the one he sought. And there it was, a seemingly diminutive and feeble horse hidden amidst the others. Knox's determination never wavered as he approached the horse. He turned to his family, announcing that he had chosen the weakest and smallest horse in the barn. He could feel the surprise radiating from his brothers and even from the family head, who wore a perplexed expression. The horse he had chosen defied expectations, but Knox had his reasons. The family head told Knox that he was given another chance to choose a different horse, indicating that the horse he chose was a really bad choice. But through his insight ability, Knox triggered the loading of the horse's stat window. Carl's lifeless body started to convulse, and Knox could feel the magic at work. Knox understood the rarity and potential within this creature, as some creatures are divided into ranks. Depending on its growth, it can grow more than one rank. He smiles to himself, aware that the horse he chose can obtain the highest rank. Its obsidian trait makes it the most rare kind of many out there and refers to the type of igneous rock. He turns his glance at the family head, thinking that if he knew the horse's traits, he would have taken the horse himself. He further thought that despite the horse's current state marked by multiple debuffs and a looming sense of mortality, Knox held firm in his decision. He believed that with his knowledge and abilities, he could save this remarkable horse. The family head, concerned and disappointed, questioned Knox's choice, doubting his reasoning. He wondered if Knox projected himself onto the horse, thinking that Nox was just an emotional and weak one, making him a disappointment. The family head tells Nox that he hopes he would not regret his decision. The family head turns to leave as the brothers called out to him. Nox wondered if his decision was really that disappointing as the others selected their own horses. The head butler interjected, urging Nox to name the horse. He pondered for a moment about the name. When it quickly dawned on him, he settled on the name Carl. It was a name that held profound significance for him, as it was the name he used to clear the game in a lunatic. Later, in the privacy of his room, Nox observed Carl lying on the bed covered by a protective sheet. Nox had taken the precaution of hiding the horse from prying eyes, ensuring that his actions remained hidden. Nox's gaze met Carl's determined eyes, mirroring his own struggle for survival. He recognized that Carl, like himself, fought against the impending end, clinging to the desire for more time. Summoning Rona, Nox demanded her immediate response, only to witness her stumble and fall upon entering. Teasing her about her habitual clumsiness, Nox assigned her the task of taking care of Carl. Rona's initial surprise and reluctance faded, replaced by begrudging acceptance as Rona questioned the feasibility of having a horse in bed. Nox reminded her of Carl's condition and encouraged her to do her best. Reluctantly, Rona agreed, glancing at the horse with a mix of annoyance and sympathy. She then turned to Carl, asking if he was hungry, unknowingly embarking on an extraordinary journey. Nox, contemplating the unfolding events, realized that the shock of what was to come would test Rona's resilience. He wondered if she would be able to handle the weight of their shared secret. 3 days had passed, and the day started with Rona's loud wailing. Rona was crying and holding Carl's head. She tells Nox that Carl was dead. Nox stares at them, knowing that Rona was crying because Carl had left the world. He recalls the past memories of Rona taking extremely good care of Carl and had put in a lot of effort over the past 3 days. Nox felt bad for her, but he had already known that something like this would happen and that Carl couldn't be saved. Poor horsey, guys. Nox then tells Rona to stop crying as it was distracting him, but Rona was still concerned about Carl. He tells her not to worry, as Carl would soon return to his side again. Rona looked at him after hearing those words and wondered if something was wrong with his head. Feeling annoyed by her reply, Nox tells her to get behind him now. He takes out a scroll from his jacket, and Rona was curious about the scroll. He unrolls the scroll, and it showed a summoning circle on it. As he places it down, Nox began to cast a spell, thinking to infuse his mana into his scroll. Rona was shocked to witness what was happening as the spell was coming to completion. Nox showed a smile as a sweat drop appears on his face once the spell began to die down. Rona approached Nox with caution, asking why he knew how to use mana as it was illegal, but Nox was too tired to reply and thought about how he couldn't control his mana well. He decides to go for another round. He tells Rona to stop distracting him, as it will make Carl die a second time, and that this time it would be her fault. Rona covered her mouth to stop herself from distracting Nox while he was trying his best to focus on the spell. He continues to cast the spell, thinking that he needed to focus and that he was still someone who hasn't awakened their trait of genius of mana detection. Nox recalls the law about using mana under the age of 15, which was not allowed unless you were from the Imperial family. This made it possible for the descendants of the Imperial family to be several times more proficient at magic compared to other students who were learning to control mana later. Nox studies his mind, thinking that the only thing he could do right now was to pour as much mana as he could into the scroll. The scroll begins to emit purple flames, which Nox could feel its energy from his palms. He realizes that this was mana. He smirks and thinks about how interesting it would be to use his one-time use skill confirmation vouchers. Staring at his hand with purple flames below it, Nox knew that he mustn't make any mistakes because of the magic that he will be using from now. A window appears saying that the skill Book of the Dead, Necromicron, which was a one-time use object, had been obtained. Nox was using black magic now. A skeleton hand holding onto the book appears with a glowing purple aura. A window appears stating that the target Carl can be revived as an undead. The window asks Nox if he would like to use the magic. Within the game in a lunatic, there are two types of beings that possess the trait of an undead. The first type is beings brought back to life with black magic or dark mana. The second type is those that are brought back to life without an ego, and a reborn is a stronger being. Quick question for the viewers, which one would you choose? The first or second type? Comment down below. Nox thinks that those types of beings would remain blindly loyal towards its master almost to a fault. But the problem was that there was only one family that revives corpses as undead, and that would be the Dark family, Marva's family. While Rain Hathor is also a Dark family, it is mainly a Night family, but the Marvis family is a family of black mages that control the undead. In that case, shouldn't players that don't belong to the Marvis family not be able to use their skills at all? Nox thinks. But because of the one-time voucher he had gotten, a Necromicron, which was also known as the Book of the Dead, caused Nox to smile. He then soon notices clawed hands appearing from the scroll of summoning. The hands began to surround the body of Carl and were reaching towards it. The hands soon began to cover the entire body of Carl into its darkness. Blood then dripped from Nox's mouth. Rona calls out to him, but he tells her to be quiet, ignoring the blood that's on his face. He focuses on the spell for just a little bit more, but it begins to wreak havoc all over. Nox begins to cough out blood. He looks at his hands and sees that his mana was running out and curses at it. But then he looks up and sees that Carl was now standing up from the dead. Carl roars out loud as its body had changed. Nox looks at Carl just as a window pops up informing him that he had activated the skill successfully. The window states that his pet Carl has been revived as an undead. The eyes of Carl shined bright like a diamond, and Nox was happy to see that the spell worked and that Carl was back from the dead. Rona calls out to Nox in concern, so he stood up, wiping the blood off his face. Nox calls out to Carl, then approaches Nox and bows its head towards him. Windows appear everywhere showing Carl's traits and information. They were the same as before, except he had gotten a negative trait which states that Carl will be growing at 1.5 times the normal rate, and it would be possible for him to unsummon and summon Carl depending on the mana of the player. Seeing these windows made Nox realize that he had succeeded. Nox touches the head of Carl and telling Carl that he will be his master from now on. Just as Nox was thinking something interrupted him which Carl also notices. Rona had rushed in between the both of them and went to hug them, catching the both of them off guard. Nox sees this and asks Rona what she was doing. Rona was busy crying too much to hear his words. After calming down a bit, she complained to Nox that he had used too much mana and that she thought something had happened to him. She also scolds Carl for being too reckless, but Carl ignores her words and faces away from her. This shocks and angers Rona as she yells at him, telling him that she had cared for him so much. She tells Carl to spit up the carrot she gave him, but Carl just snorts at her. Nox smiles, seeing them having fun. He then thinks about what the next hidden piece would be up next. A few days later, Nox is seen walking around the estate at night and was inside the barn. He exits the barn and took out a shiny object and a piece of paper. Nox thinks to himself that the road wasn't much different when compared to the game. He places the paper back into his bag, thinking that it was a relief. The second hidden piece of the Rain Hathor family was an item that he must obtain, as it was a key that will help a little in compensating for the terminally ill trait. But then noises are heard from the bushes which Nox hears. Nox turns to see what it was but thought that he was being too sensitive. A wooden sign is seen as Nox continued on his adventure. He thinks to himself that this was no longer a game but reality for him. The sign states that it was Mir's forest and that young children that enter may get lost and die. Just as Nox thinks about not wanting to die a second time, a window appears stating that Nox had entered the missing child forest. The name is changed for Mir's forest. Another window appears saying that failure to clear this palace will result in death. The missing child's forest was a forest that was within the Rainhafer's territory where entry was prohibited because of the darkness and fog. No matter how skilled a ranger or pathfinder is, they will still have trouble finding their way around. Nox thinks about the name of the forest as it was a place that causes everyone to get lost like a child, but there was also a different meaning behind its name. If a full-grown adult were to kill a monster, they won't be able to get any artifacts. Nox shudders at the thought that he had died here a few times in order to find the right way to clear it, as the difficulty of the monster would go up if they were an adult, which was why the difficulty of the missing child forest was at least 2.5 stars, said Nox while thinking that this was a game where the difficulty is the worst. As he walks through the forest, Nox thinks about how he had played this game really hard to clear without knowing what items would appear. But now that he thinks about it, this was the perfect item for the terminally ill Drake. He soon stops in his tracks to pull out a torch. He lights the torch up. The flames of the torch shine bright like a diamond in Nox's hand. Its light was paving a way forward for Nox. Nox lets the wind carry the torch smoke, as the torch was a crucial key in clearing the missing child's forest because of the direction of the smoke. But Nox smirks as the true key was to go in the opposite direction of the smoke. Before Nox moves on, he closes his eyes and grabs onto the sword. He turns around and speaks out loud, saying, "How long do you intend to hide? How about revealing yourself now?" But no one replies to him in the forest. Nox lets out a sigh, saying, "Hiding until the end, huh?" He grips his sword tightly and swings it towards a pile of bushes, which lets out a scream. "I can't believe that my beauty didn't work on him," said a voice looking in the mirror. It belonged to Talia, who couldn't understand it at all. But a voice calls out to her, saying, "Young miss." It belonged to her servant Emma, who was begging her to stop following Nox around. She tells Talia that if she continues, she will be scolded. But Talia assures her that she won't allow her to be fired from the family. But Emma said that wasn't the point. As Emma walked through the hallways carrying a lit candle, she thought about how Talia was talented enough for people to respect her as the next matriarch, only if Chell wasn't around. Emma lets out a sigh as she wonders why Talia felt inferior to her own sister and was being so impatient. She soon reaches a door and thinks that Talia probably gave up on stalking Nox and was now sleeping. She enters the room and looks around, but fear took over her as she couldn't find Talia in the room. Her hand was trembling as she thinks about Talia going out to find Nox. She then wakes everyone up in the building. Talia was then revealed to be the one in the bushes with the dagger on her leg. Nox was stunned to see that it was Talia in the bushes. Talia then greets Nox, but he asks her what she was doing here. She hesitates to answer back at him, but then Nox notices something. He tells her to get behind him as he points the torch forward. A clawed paw and a tail were then seen. It belonged to a grey wolf. Talia began to grow nervous as she didn't expect to be in the grey wolf's territory in the forest, and that she only had a dagger with her right now. The grey wolf began to circle Nox and Talia. Its eyes were focused on them with evil, but then it raises its head up into the air and lets out a fierce howl into the air, which startles Nox and Talia as the light of the moon shined into the forest. The grey wolf lunges towards Nox and Talia with its fangs showing, but Nox was smiling at this, while Talia was nervous. She was surprised to see Nox rushing forward. Nox uses the torch to land a hit on the grey wolf as it pounces towards them and soon slices the neck of the grey wolf. It falls to the ground, startling Talia. She thought about how incredible it was for Nox to defeat it so cleanly. But something catches her eye. Nox turns around to see her as his face was covered with blood. He then questions Talia about why she was following him, as he had thought that it was his brothers that were following him. Talia whirls her hair and stutters, saying she was out on a night walk. Nox goes to grab his torch, saying not to him, otherwise he would leave her here alone. Upon hearing those words, she grabs onto Nox's wrist, which surprises him. She then explains in a mad flurry that she caught him sneaking out while thinking about how to be as strong as him, and that if she followed him, she could find out his secret training method. That was why she followed him into the forest. Nox smiles and thinks about being certain about 3 things. The first thing was that Talia thinks immensely highly of Nox. The second was that she was not hostile towards him. And lastly, that she was a kid that knows nothing about how dangerous it was to follow others late at night. Knowing that she was one of the core characters, Nox couldn't leave her here alone. He then tells her to follow him for now. As he begins to walk, Nox tells her that he wanted to make something clear. Nox turns to her and tells her that he was not trying to help her but was just trying to resolve the wolf situation so his family doesn't get put in a bad spot. Talia blushes and says she was sorry and that she was in the wrong this time. Nox looks at her and thinks that she probably won't do anything dangerous again. But then Talia begins to call out to Nox and tells him thanks while blushing as the leaves flow around them. Nox was surprised to hear those words from her. Talia then begins to say something else but was shocked to see something. A pack of grey wolves had appeared from the shadows. Talia calls out Nox's name as he stood there with his lit torch, showing that they were up against a whole lot of grey wolves. Talia was trembling in fear as she holds onto Nox's arm tightly, but he tells her to get away from her, which surprises Talia. Nox stands in front of her and tells her that she will be in his way when he swings his sword. He begins thinking about how there were some unexpected variables and that he needed to focus again. He stares at the grey wolves, knowing that this was the place before the scenario starts, and that since it's an area within the prologue, there won't be any boss monsters. But an elite monster, one rank below the boss monster, will appear in the evolved form of the grey wolf he had just cut down, called the Elite Grey Wolf. The grey wolves, though, were circling around Talia, and Nox began to move and dash towards them. Just as Nox thinks about knowing who his enemy is doesn't mean that things would go smoothly for him. He slices the 2 grey wolves closest to him. As their wolves continue to attack him, a single wolf was standing behind its pack and watching the battle unfold as Nox thought to himself that there were times when one ought to realize that it's possible they've been driven into a corner. Nox notices something was headed to him, and he sees that a grey wolf had leapt towards him in the air. He continues to think that he'll repeat what he always said in times like this, just like when he was Yu-chan and a player in Inner Lunatic. He prepares his blade for his next attack, and with a major swing of his blade, it lands a hit onto the grey wolf as he thought of himself as a freaking weakling. Nox finally relaxes and lets out a deep breath. There the chapter ends. Nox finally relaxes and lets out a deep breath. Talia, who is holding onto the torch, is amazed at Nox, noting that he hasn't even revealed his full power yet, with his sword technique being even more amazing than when he was fighting his brothers. She stares at the dead grey wolves, wondering if Nox had ever killed grey wolves before. Talia grips the torch tightly, thinking that Nox still thinks of her as being weak. However, something is happening in the forest that catches both of their attention. Nox looks up and notes that it was finally here Elite Grey Wolves had appeared in front of them. Back at the barn on the estate, the servants are calling out to Talia and asking for more torches. 2 tracks of small footsteps are found marked on the ground, and a servant deduces that they belong to Nox and Talia. The servant tells the others that he believes that both of them had entered the missing child's forest. Emma collapses upon hearing that they went into the forest. She turns around to ask what they should do, telling the others that they need to go into the forest immediately. However, Rodwell tells her not to be foolish, as going into the forest was impossible. Emma shouts at him, wondering why they couldn't go in. It was because the forest was something that even the Rainhafer family had not managed to clear. The missing child's forest was ranked one of the highest within the Rainhafer family. While the Rainhafer family is known to be the strongest dark family in the south, the fact that there's still a forest that they aren't able to clear is basically like saying that they were incompetent. But there was the fact that only children who haven't become adults can enter the forest, and that the forest can only be cleared successfully by children hasn't made known to them yet. Rodwell thinks hard about why Nox would enter the forest. He looks at the footprints and doesn't think that Nox was bewitched by a mind-controlling monster. Based on the tracks, Nox had moved with care, and there were also no traces of anyone getting past the strongest man barrier of the estate too. Rodwell looks up into the sky, and with all the facts that he had gathered, he realizes that Knox had intentionally gone into the forest. He grips his fist tightly and knows that he could no longer see Knox as the weak and frail young master from before. Rodwell then begins to speak, telling the others that there was only one way for both of them to return. He tells them that Knox has to use his wisdom to find their way out of the forest. Emma, tears and sweat begin to come out upon hearing Rodwell's words. The servants continue to search around the area with their lit torches, but Emma is still feeling terrified as tears flow from her face. She believes that she was the one who had caused Talia to die. Talia grabs the dagger off of her leg and prepares to fight back against the monsters. Knox looks back at her and tells her not to attack unnecessarily, as she might get hurt. She just needs to stay out of the fight, while thinking that she hasn't lost concentration despite being scared. He continues to advise her to save her strength and to run away if she were to be attacked. Only then could she raise her rate of survival a little higher. Looking at the elite grey wolves, Knox thinks that killing one wouldn't be that dangerous since it had only a 2.5 rating. But all he wants right now is for Talia to remain vigilant and to be able to react to her surroundings. Knox continues to look at her, noticing that she had learned well but not yet at a level where he could trust her with his back. He looks forward and starts to prepare his attack. He activates the skill hour of the genius, thinking that by using this skill, he could kill it in one go. However, the elite grey wolf is smiling for some reason, surprising both Knox and Talia. The pack of elite grey wolves seems to be making fun of the two of them. Knox soon became annoyed as he realized what the grey wolves were doing. All of a sudden, one of the grey wolves began to dash towards him. Knox easily landed a blow onto the grey wolf, causing the other grey wolves to stop in their tracks. However, Knox was wary of why they stopped attacking together. The elite grey wolf was seen just laying on the floor with a calm expression on its face. The grey wolves then began another round of attacks by coming at Knox from all sides. Knox managed to slice one of the wolves, but another grey wolf appeared behind him, letting out a fierce roar that captured Knox's attention. Before Knox could react, a dagger was sent flying straight into the grey wolf's body, killing it. Knox looked to where the dagger had come from and saw Talia in the trees, telling him to be careful. Talia, determined not to run away, asked Knox if he was all right and if he was hurt anywhere. Knox, realizing that Talia had just saved him, felt his feelings towards her changing. However, more grey wolves slowly started to approach Knox. The elite grey wolf finally faced Knox with its eyes shining bright like a diamond. Knox smiled at the fact that it was finally getting up. The elite grey wolf circled around Knox like a vulture, and then, unexpectedly, it dashed past him. Confused by the actions of the elite grey wolf, Knox braced himself for a fight. However, the elite grey wolf dashed past him instead. Knox realized that the recoil from his skill was already here, and more grey wolves approached him. The elite grey wolf, focusing on Knox, circled around him, let out a low growl, and then sped towards him. To Knox's surprise, the elite grey wolf dashed past him once again. Knox stood still, holding onto his injured shoulder, as the elite grey wolf sliced his left arm with its claw. Blood dripped from its claws after the attack. Talia, seeing this, called out to Knox in concern. The elite grey wolf then ran in a different direction, leaving Knox injured and confused. Knox steadied himself with his sword, cursing at the thought that this was only supposed to be a 2.5-star encounter. He believed that the rating needed to be revised, as the elite grey wolf was smarter and more cunning than in the game. Knox looked around for the elite grey wolf, realizing that it had used the terrain and geographical advantages to its advantage. A sudden noise from the bushes caught Knox's attention, and he turned to face it, needing to get his guard up. When the elite grey wolf was near him, Knox swung his sword towards it, but the elite grey wolf stopped inches from him, causing him to miss his attack. The elite grey wolf snickered and smiled at Knox, revealing its sharp fangs, and launched towards him. Nox realized that it was waiting for him to make a big swing and had shown an opening. Nox grunted hard and tried his best to swing his sword once again, shouting out, but he soon realized that the recoil had fully arrived. The elite Grey Wolf was now inches from Nox's face, its mouth wide open, ready to take a bite out of him. Nox, filled with dread, wondered if he couldn't predict this because he had gotten too excited due to having cleared the game many times before. He closed his eyes in preparation for the elite Grey Wolf's painful bite. However, a rough sound interrupted him, causing Nox to open his eyes to see what had happened. A dagger had been shoved into the elite Grey Wolf's eye. Nox realized that Talia had thrown the dagger, creating an unexpected variable and saving his life once again. Holding onto his sword for dear life, Nox let out a battle cry, pushing the sword straight into the elite Grey Wolf's body with all his remaining strength. The elite Grey Wolf yelled out in pain from the combined attacks of Talia and Nox and finally collapsed onto the ground with the dagger still in its eye. Exhausted from the battle, Nox kneeled on the ground, breathing heavily. Talia, holding the torch, rushed in front of Nox, asking if he was all right. Nox wiped the blood off his face and started to thank Talia but stopped himself, realizing that he was about to thank an enemy who would kill him in the future. Talia, confused, asked if Nox was okay, and tears began to flow in her eyes as she expressed concern about his injuries. Nox assured her that it was just a slight wound, but Talia continued to worry. Nox cut her off, telling her it was fine, and took back the torch from her. As Talia continued to express her relief, a spider suddenly dropped down. Talia, terrified, screamed and rushed toward Nox, grabbing onto him tightly. Nox was stunned by her reaction, wondering how long she intended to hold onto him. He decided to wipe the spider off Talia's shoulder, teasing her about not becoming a knight and causing her to fluster. Nox coughed blood due to the intense fight with the wolves, and Talia asked if he was okay with concern. Nox informed her not to worry about him and thought about the recoil. Despite the screaming and fear, Nox was glad that Talia had pulled her weight and saved him. The sun finally rose, lighting up the forest. A ring emitted a dark aura near the corpse of the wolf Nox had killed, and he and Talia needed to find a way out of the forest. Crying noises could still be heard at the estate. Emma was seen still kneeling on the ground while crying. She says out loud that she was the one that had killed the young Miss Talia. Rodwell stood near Emma as he wondered if Talia and Nox did not make it. He looks up with a worried expression on his face as he thinks that the disappearance of Miss Talia will create a problem between both families, and since a lot of children in this area would go missing in the missing child's forest, he continues to be worried as he thought of how the people who secretly say that the Rainhafer family was incompetent. But another servant shouts out to Rodwell, telling him to look over there. They could see that the forest, was being lifted. The sight of the fog being cleared meant that the missing child's forest has been cleared. This sight stuns everyone at the estate as Emma and Rodwell stared at it in awe. Emma immediately stands up to ask Rodwell about the meaning behind the fog being lifted in the forest and if it meant what she thought. Rodwell agrees with Emma that her thoughts were right. He explains to her that the event of the fog being cleared meant that the missing child forest had been cleared and that the only possibility that they were all thinking about had turned into reality. Emma became teary-eyed once Rodwell explained to her what was happening. Nox and Talia had now appeared at the entrance of the missing child's forest. The servants shouted out that young Master Nox was coming out. The servants were baffled to learn that young Master Nox had actually managed to clear the forest, which was hard to believe, and it looked like he was coming out of it as if it was nothing. Rodwell tries his best to hide a smile while knowing that he was certain now. With the clearing of the missing child forest, Rodwell knew that the hierarchy of the descendants within the Rainhafer family was about to experience great turmoil. Nox has finally returned and asked why everyone was gathered around the entrance of the missing child forest. Emma shouts out to young Ms. Talia and rushes towards her. She immediately hugs Talia and tells her that everyone was extremely worried about her. Rodwell informs Nox that the people from the family were worried about his disappearance too. Nox was surprised to learn that his family was worried about him, as he couldn't believe that they would worry over a good-for-nothing like him. The reputation of his family as a dark family was about to go down. Talia tells Emma to stop crying as she continued to wipe her tears away. Emma then grabs tightly onto Talia's shoulder. With a slightly angry voice, she tells Talia that she was going to tell her all about the 71 rules of the Stilrain Hayfor family again and ask Talia to follow her. Talia gets nervous and soon tells Emma that she was sorry. But Emma didn't let go of Talia, informing her that she wouldn't dare to blame her, as she ensures Talia that the patriarch would be teaching her the rules personally. Nox looks at Emma and notes that she looked like Rona, who has extraordinary stamina at level 4.5. Emma then thanks Nox for protecting their young miss while being in the forest, still having a sad expression on her face. Nox tells Talia that even though he didn't have the intention of going in with her, she managed to pull her own weight, so she shouldn't beat herself up too much. Talia's face lit up like a Christmas tree upon hearing those words from Nox. Back at the family estate, Nox places down his sword and bag onto a chair. He starts to undress while being glad that his adventure in the missing child's forest was over. He touches his head with an exhaustive look on his face, thinking about how Rodwell was waiting outside the forest with knights, which was totally unexpected. He wonders if Rodwell did that because of Talia, but he brushes off that thought as a smile creeps on his face as he looks at his pocket. He had gotten the item that he wanted from the missing child's forest. He pulls out the hidden piece onto the palm of his hand, and a window appears, telling Nox that he had obtained a new artifact. Another window appears, informing him that he has obtained an accessory called the Black Flame Ring. Window information about the Black Flame Ring pops up. Its name was the Black Flame Ring, its category was accessory, its grade was low intermediate, its attribute was darkness, its stats were +1 stamina and +1 mana, and its requirement was that it could only be equipped by those who were able to use dark mana. The Black Flame Ring also had a special effect: when a user defeats a target while equipping it, the user will be able to steal a very small amount of their life force and turn it into theirs. The higher the rank of the target defeated, the more life force the player will steal. Max smiles as he looks to the right. He knew that it was the only artifact that can steal someone else's life force. But his expression changes as he knew that just having the ring doesn't guarantee that Nox will live a long life. Nox knew that one's life cannot be extended infinitely, and considering that only a small amount of life force can be stolen, it won't be easy to overcome the terminal illness. As long as Nox can struggle, he could progress. Nox decides to place the ring on his finger, prompting a window to appear, telling him that he has equipped the Black Flame Ring. He smiles, knowing that being able to struggle was way better than a life that was hopelessly on the verge of death. After equipping the Black Flame Ring, Nox could feel that his life force and mental were increasing. He soon shouts out, calling Rona's name. He tells her that he knew that she had been lingering outside of the room for a while. The door to the room soon opens. Rona peeks her head out of the door nervously, asking Nox if he had the ability to see through things. Nox tells her that he might be able to, which causes Rona to blush heavily as she covered her eyes with her hands, asking Nox if it also meant that he could see her naked body as well. Nox hits her on the head and, in anger, upon hearing those words from her, yells at her about what she was talking about. Rona stumbles away from Nox after being hit and tells him that it hurts. As she rubs the spot on her head that got hit, she asks Nox why his finger flick felt like it hurts even more now. Nox places his arm on the table, telling Rona that they should arm wrestle **A. Rhonda places her arm on the table as well with a confident look on her face. She tells Nox that if she wins, he will increase her salary. Nox agrees but warns her about losing, as she knew that he would deduct 20% of her salary. They soon hold each other's hand and begin the countdown for the match. Nox looks in anticipation as the countdown reaches 2. Upon hearing the number 3 being called out, he immediately slams Rona's arm onto the table with ease, which surprises her. Rona's face was filled with dread and shock as she wonders what had just happened and that something was strange. She immediately calls out to Nox, telling him that it was unbefitting of a reputable family's son to reduce the salary of a servant's poor pittance by 20%. Nox waves his hand in the air and tells her that what she said was true, but he reminds her that he was the rumored good-for-nothing of the Rainhaffer family, which was a rumor that she had spread. With a happy smile on his face, Nox tells her that he did not care for trivial things such as armor. Rona immediately bows on the floor to apologize to Nox, but a sudden feeling overcame Nox that jolts him up. Multiple windows appear, informing him that the effects of the trait frequent sickness have been activated. Nox has obtained wrist fracture level 2 and obtained a level 1 flu. Nox was annoyed to be afflicted with such troublesome status afflictions. He then informs Rona that he would cancel the reduction of her salary if she brings him some ice in a wet towel. Rona looks at him with a worried expression as she could see that he wasn't looking too well. Nox had a painful expression on his face as he thought about being satisfied with getting the ring for now and that he needed to get some rest. But a memory started to appear from before his reincarnation. His past self was dying as he thought about how sure he was with the name John, the 2 hidden pieces Carl and the black flame ring. It has been 6 months since Nox has gotten them. He closes his eyes regretfully. However, there hasn't been a chance to use them. A sign is hung on the wall where it states that our boy Nox von Rainhaffer has been grounded. Nox finally lets out a deep sigh over seeing the sign. He returns to his room, stating that it wasn't like he was planning on getting into any trouble. He had even cleared the missing child's forest. Nox still couldn't believe that his family had decided to ground him instead of rewarding him. He turns around to ask Rona if she agrees with what he said, but Rona couldn't agree with Nox since she was a maid that belongs to the family. Her worry was that her salary would be reduced if she spoke poorly of the patriarch. Nox tells her that he swears upon his hand that her salary will be reduced if she doesn't act to his preferences. Hearing those words shocks Rona. She immediately agrees with Nox that the patriarch was being way too harsh. She questions how he could not even understand how Nox would feel. Nox finally takes a seat, thinking about how hard he had been working on adapting to this life and living a pretty productive life while watching Carl's growth. But he knew deep down that he couldn't carry him like this because his life was being shortened. Even now, a new notification window appears, telling him that his remaining life due to terminal illness is 147 days. Frustration took over him after reading that. His hand trembled as he knew that this darn system is more interested in his life than he was. Nox decides that he couldn't take it anymore. He needed to go to his father to seek permission to get out somehow. A few knocks are heard from the doors. Rona tells Nox that she was just about to warm up the bathing waters. Rodwell greets Nox as young master. He bows his head and informs him that the patriarch has summoned him. Nox was taken aback to see that what he wanted had been granted. A flashback is seen where many dead bodies lay on the ground, covered in armor and swords. Blood is spilled everywhere as a dark atmosphere was felt. The patriarch, also known as Nox Daddy, was seen standing alone on the battlefield with his sword covered in blood. He is surrounded by the dead bodies of demons. He glances upwards to the sky where a worried expression on his face. More demons with wings could be seen flying around the dark skies. This was the night of slaughter. Red demons with wings appeared above him, screaming out horrifying sounds. They soon gathered together and dove straight down towards Nox's father. He grips his blade hard as a dark aura is slowly being released from it. With a determined look in his eye, he lets out a powerful swing from his sword that slices through all the demons that came looking for him. Back to the present, the patriarch was thinking about the demons that were swarming back there, the humans that were caught up in them in the night of slaughter. The room he was in was filled with a nasty black aura that spread all around him. He slowly opens his eyes, thinking of that past memory as a disaster. The darkness that filled the room suddenly went inside of him as if he was holding on to the powers of darkness. The patriarch knew that someday one of his sons will probably learn the supreme black sword. But he couldn't rely on probabilities. He needed talent that is certain because one of them will have to kill him. Rodwell soon appears in the room. He informs the patriarch that the young Master Nox will be here soon. The patriarch noted that Nox was late, so Rodwell should send him in here right away. He recalls the missing child's forest as a place that even he was not able to clear. To think that Nox was able to clear that place, the patriarch thought that it would be appropriate to reward him, but the reason he was late in rewarding him was because of the strong objections of the family's vassals. The vassals didn't believe that Nox, who was a good-for-nothing, had changed and began an investigation to check if Nox had really cleared the forest. The patriarch could be seen holding onto a document of the complete investigation. He looks at it, knowing that he couldn't ignore the opinions of their family's vassals. So the investigation was a necessary process. A hand soon appears on the room's door that catches his attention. Nox finally arrived. He bows his head to pay his respects to the patriarch. The patriarch tells him to rise, to which Nox agrees. He informs Nox that he should have already known that his actions were wrong. Nox says yes, but the patriarch tells him that it was his job. Patriarch had summoned Nox to discuss his reward. He tells Nox that he would grant him one request. The patriarch was willing to fulfill just one request of his, no matter what it is. Nox was taken aback by the sudden reward. He couldn't believe that the patriarch would be willing to give him anything he wanted. Even to Nox, who had played tons of hours on Interlunatic, is seeing Theo giving a reward for the first time. Theo is the name of the patriarch. Nox thought about how he was usually authoritative and stern, though, but Nox felt that someone had just shot him in the head. But again, he felt that it was more like someone just slashed him from behind. He looks at Theo and wonders if he would truly grant anything. "You wanted anything? I'll grant you anything," said Theo, as the patriarch of Rainhafer. Nox, with a smile, after being granted back his freedom, Theo reminds Nox to always bear in mind that he is a part of their Rainhafer family. The next day, members of the family are seen gathered outside their mansion. Talia was wearing a beautiful green dress. She tells Nox that they would meet at Albion Academy the next time they meet, but Nox was reluctant to reply back to her. He simply turned his head away. Talia continues to pester Nox, saying she would see him again. Okay, but our shy boy still doesn't reply and turns his head again. Rodwell cuts in to inform Nox that he ought to answer when a lady asks him a question. Max lets outside before agreeing to Rodwell. He tells Talia that they would meet if she becomes a full-fledged knight. Before that, hearing those words suddenly gave Talia a body full of motivation. She wonders, as in, not getting all scared, even after seeing a super huge spider, said Nox. Talia became shy and blushes hard after hearing that comment. She sends a quick punch into Nox's stomach, causing him to spit out. He thought about how he should have said wolves instead of spiders would have been better. Talia continues to tell him that once she returns after becoming a full-fledged knight, he should prepare his head for her. This sends shivers down Nox's spine as he wonders why she wanted his head. He thought about how she was intending to kill him. Emma cuts in to thank everyone for everything. This, especially the young Master Nox, wonders were made of the Cyllene family had to thank him for. Emma reminds Nox that she wanted to thank him for saving their young Miss Talia. Nox hears this and lets out a deep sigh, saying that it wasn't like he was intentionally saving her. "Stop bothering me and leave already," were the last words Nox told them as a carriage is seen leaving the estate. Nox continues to watch as they left, thinking that since one person had already left, it made him question why he was slowly getting used to this weird life. He didn't know the exact reason, but he felt that he was kind of enjoying it. A notification window appears, reminding Knox that his remaining life he is left, due to the terminal illnesses, 146 days. Knox was taken by surprise by this reminder. With 146 days left to live, he knew that he had no time to rest. A few days later, Emma tells him that he needed to get a new maid and new servants. Knox thought deeply about their new maid for a moment, but Rodwell soon enters the room and greets him. Knox asks him what was the matter. Rodwell informs Knox that the Albion Academy has sent a maid in training to assist him. A young lady with green hair appears in a maid outfit. She bows her head to Knox, introducing herself as his exclusive maid. From today onwards, her name is Chitre de la Villia. Knox took a moment before introducing himself. He scans her windows as it's reflected in his eyes. She was 15 years old, species human, main element earth. But the most important thing in the window was the present situation. It was about monitoring player, based on orders of Theo von Reinhafer. A new window appears with the update. It now states that Knox is 140 days to live. Knox was feeling anxious because he knew his time was limited. It feels like it goes too darn fast. The only positive thing here would be that he was actually growing pretty fast despite having such a severe penalty. Knox looks out their window. He knew that he will soon be admitted into the Albion Academy too. Rona cheerfully reminds Knox that 2 months from now he would finally start to attend the Albion Academy. She questions him about whether he was feeling nervous. Knox questions her back on whether she was happy about the fact that he was leaving this place for the academy. The sudden question startles Rona. She started to tear up and tells Knox that she was already starting to miss him. Knox felt something was off and tells her to not overreact since he was going to reduce her salary. Rona's face immediately turned normal. She salutes him and agrees to his command. Knox could only think that he didn't even have time to bully her now. Within the next 2 months, if Knox didn't increase his stats by even a little, he definitely won't be able to survive inside the academy. Albion, the Empire's best academy, is where monsters, strong cadets from all over the country gather. After surviving that place and entering the main story, Knox must play the role of the villain, Knox von Reinhafer as well. But Knox held a painful expression on his face. He knew that everything was so tough. Their next part is a repeat from before. For some reason, Rona then informs Knox that he needed to get a new maid and new servants. Hearing this causes Knox to think about something. Rodwell enters their room and greets him. He informs Knox that the Albion Academy has sent a maid in training to assist him. A young lady with green hair appears in a maid outfit. She bows her head to Knox, introducing herself as his exclusive maid. From today onwards, her name is Chitre de la Villia. Knox took a moment before introducing himself. He scans her windows as it's reflected in his eyes. She was 15 years old, species human, main element earth. But the most important thing in the window was the present situation. It was about monitoring player, based on orders of Theo von Reinhafer. She looks at him and tells Knox that she would do her very best to support him. But Knox knew that they wouldn't let him leave this place comfortably. This brings us to Theo von Reinhafer, one of the biggest villains and one of the strongest beings in their world. When wondering about how he rose to his current position, many ask if it was from his swordsmanship alone. He's so skilled that few doubt that that's their case. However, the main reason that Theo was able to take his place as the top of the Reinhafer family was because he was suspicious of everything and everyone that was around him. Theo looks at Chitre, telling her that he has great expectations for her this time around. She looks down and agrees to his request. Theo tells her that he had heard that she had been pushed back in the line of succession within the Lavilia family. He continues to say that if she does well this time, the Rainhafer family will spare no efforts to support her in their succession. Chitri agrees to assist young Master Nox with all her heart, but Theo tells her number. She looks up at him and could see a dark aura that covered him from head to toe. Certainly, here is the modified text with added symbols. This sent shivers down her spine. She changes her instruction and pledges that she would monitor Nox strictly and report every single thing back to him. Chitri finally left the room and stood against the door, her heart pounding quickly after meeting with Theo. His last words to her were to not forget who her master is. She unbuttons her collar to take out a golden item. She looks at it with concern in her eyes, knowing that from this point on she mustn't waver any further. The lights in Nox's room continue to be shining. He lays back on his bed, thinking about the spy that was jittery. He thought about how Theo probably wanted to confirm whether the person within him was Nox or not, since demon possession is something that happens quite frequently within Interlunatic. Nox is a character that had his body stolen by the number 1 demon ball in the original storyline, but Nox thought that it was fine, as long as Theo doesn't find out who he really was. But a saddened expression still hung onto Nox's face. He thought of Chitri as the problem. Chitri de Lavilia. While she was not involved in the main storyline, it'd be a waste to throw her away like this. Originally, she was supposed to become the next head of their Lavilia family, but her father and mother were killed by her uncle, and she lost her position as the next head of their family. What happened next is obvious. In the end, she became a maid of the Rainhafer family and managed to escape from her family. She looks cheerful on their outside and is always smiling, but their inside of her is so jaded and rotten, a character that is on the verge of breaking. So, her last decision would be that before the first part of their main story starts, she would commit the big no number. If you need help, guys, reach out. Nox continues to ponder about what he should do. He thought about creating a change to the storyline by saving someone who ought to be dead. Would that be the correct decision, despite knowing that doing that would mean he would put a noose onto his own neck? The next day, Rona and Chitri stood side by side. Nox informs them that they would be hunting monsters within the forest in their territory. So, of course, both of them would be following and helping him. Rona was alarmed to hear that, while Chitri continued to stand still. Rona began to tremble with her words about hunting their monsters within the territory. She tells Nox that she was going to take a leave of absence because she was sick, but Chitri simply responded with understood. Rona grabs onto her hand, telling her that she couldn't just agree to everything. Nox thought about how it was normal for a maid to be scared of hunting monsters. It was a ridiculous request. After all, Nox could see that Rona's hands were still trembling and thought about Chitri's immediate response to his request. Nox gave off a smile before informing Rona that he knew that she had used up all of her leaves. Rona became alarmed after hearing that. Nox then tells her that she was not allowed to take a sick leave today. Rona became even more scared and wondered how he could do that to her. Nox reminds her that he was a good-for-nothing and tells her that if she doesn't follow what he says, he would reduce her salary. So he wanted to go easy on her by reducing maybe half of her annual salary. Tears streamed down her face as she finally caves into his request. She cries and asks whether he wanted her to bring along a bow or a sword. Nox laughs at her response as Chitri calls out to him. She asks him if she could inform Rodwell that he would be leaving the estate before she started to prepare. Nox thought about how she was right about that, but his top priority would be increasing his lifespan since he was now free to go anywhere. The group could now be seen galloping through the forest on their horses. Theo watches them from his office window. A serious look was all he held. A few days later, the missing child's forest that looks like a normal forest. After it was cleared, a wolf makes a sudden appearance. But our boy is prepared. He lets out a single slash that kills the wolf in one hit. A window appears to notify him that he has stolen a very small amount of the grey wolf's life force. He had also obtained 2 hours of life. Knox decides to take a look around while wondering if he had killed all the wolves in this area. Since he gained 2 hours of life with a single hunt, this could be considered quite a successful hunt. Chitri appears with a bottle of water, informing Knox that it has been an hour since he started the hunt, which made her wonder if he was tired. Hearing that news made Knox depressed. He knew that since he didn't activate the Hour of the Genius skill, it took a long time to hunt. That means he had only earned an hour. He knew the calculation wouldn't balance out nicely, but this is way too off. It's not like he can be killing monsters every single hour. The biggest concern, however, would be that there are a limited number of monsters. Since he had been hunting for the last few days, Knox has killed most of the monsters. At this rate, his plan of having a great life is in danger of completely falling apart. Knox lets out a deep sigh and stated that not having many monsters in this vicinity nowadays was also a big problem. Chitri couldn't believe that Knox had thinking that no monsters were a problem. She noted that if others were to hear what he just said, they would have thought of him as being strange. But Knox soon notices something. He turns to look at the sun and notice that it was already setting. Since it couldn't be helped, he informs them that they should return to the mansion for today. Chitri then asks if she should prepare warm bath water for him, as she would prepare it at a comfortable temperature. Knox thought that her actions were expected of a support genius. So he tells her that he wanted to bathe before dinner in order for her to make sure that the timing was correct. Chitri happily agrees to his request. Rona cuts in and tells Knox to not forget about her, as she was sure to clean his room. Knox was confused, but eventually tells her to do whatever she wants. Rona immediately gathers all of their stuff while Chitri laughs over a reaction. Knox then calls Chitri to the side by herself. He looks down but informs her that he had a question for her. Chitri started to grab onto their towel tightly. He looks at her and then asks about who she served. This question causes her to be stunned. Knox recalled her traits, where one of them was their support genius. But he knew that no matter how beautiful or great a sword is, if he couldn't use it, then he won't hesitate to throw it away. Chitri continued to remain silent, and her gaze was faced away from Knox. After hearing his question, Knox understood what her reaction meant and told her that that was her answer. Chitri was scared as she told Knox that she hadn't said anything yet, though. But Knox knew about what she wanted to say. He tells her not to worry, as he wouldn't intend to interrogate her any further. Knox was instead thankful towards her, as Chitri didn't lie to him. He then tells her that no matter who she serves, he'll think of her as one of his own. A curtain of fear soon fell upon her. After hearing those words from Knox, he walks past her while continuing to say that if she needed to, then she could make use of him as well, which was all he wanted to say. Chitri simply stared at his back as he walked off, while Knox thought that as compared to having mutual trust, wouldn't it be sufficient for them to just be making use of each other? Because that was the kind of relationship they had with one another. The scene changes to Knox's home. Rona is laying in bed, asking Chitri if she felt that Knox was just being too much. Rona thought about how Knox would say certain things like, If you don't run together with me, what fun would it be for me to train? She curses him over the fact that he did it to her every time they trained. She then asked Chitri if she thinks that he was too much as well. Chitri looks at her and agrees with what she said, with a smile on her face as she gazes out the window. She felt that the rumors that Knox was a changed person were real, as she had heard them countless times from when she was in the Lovelia family. But she had initially thought that the rumors were probably fabricated, since it's really rare for someone to change this much. However, she recalled that the rumors had said that he had defeated the twins in one go and obtained the right to attend the academy. He's also someone who's solidifying his standing within the family, which was totally different from Chitri, who's fallen all the way down despite being a legitimate successor. But what pains her the most was what Knox said to her today. She recalls the moment when he told her to make use of him as well. She continued to think deeply about what he meant by that as the night went on. Shortly after, a groundless rumor started to spread around within the Rainhaffer family. The rumor stated that Chitri was expelled from her family and now no longer deserved to be a maid of the Rainhaffer family. Our letter was written with the words, "Chitri de Lavilia, listen up. You, the incompetent family head who sold out your family, will be held accountable for your sins. You have been stripped of any rights that you have as a direct line to send." After reading the letter, Chitri knew that she won't be able to stay within the Rainhaffer family for long, as well, which was to be expected as the Rainhaffer family was one of the top dark families. Even though she was just being used as a maid for a good-for-nothing son, she was now a commoner who had lost her family and lost the right to serve Knox. She also knew that soon she'll be cut off and will be serving someone new soon. But she decides to show a bright smile as she entered the room while greeting everyone hello. Seeing their reaction to her presence made Chitri realize that they had probably heard about the rumors. She looked down with a sad expression, as she was already used to these looks of disdain. But a familiar voice calls out to her. Rona appears by her side and tells her that she had been looking everywhere for her. Chitri couldn't believe this and wondered if Rona didn't know about the rumors, but she still held on to her hand. Seeing this action made Chitri think if Rona was just messing with her or that she really thought of her as a friend. But whatever it was, Chitri was sure that Rona was doing something foolish right now. She continued to think that Rona, her, and Knox were all just foolish things. Knox was seen sitting in his room, thinking that the end is imminent not just for Chitri. Theo probably received the letter as well. All the crimes that were framed upon Chitri's father, Knox knew that they were all fabricated. But he also knew that he was unable to help her because there was no way to know what butterfly effect would be caused just by him helping her survive. The next day, wolves continued to be slain. Knox had resumed his hunt of wolves to sustain his own life force, but he held a cold look in his eyes. Rona talked about how Knox looks a little harsh today. She talked to Chitri about how he used to be a little more merciful in the past, but she noticed that he seemed a little off today. Chitri looks at her and wondered what she meant by that. She then thought about how Knox's current state was making her feel uneasy. With his sword covered in blood, Knox swings it down to get rid of it, looking around while thinking that it should be about time. It appears he wonders if it was not going to come out today as well. In the missing child's forest, a monster that appears randomly when there's only about 20% of the monsters left, the hidden boss monster. Knox was thinking of killing it because he thought it would help him in getting his stats increased. But he guessed that it was not going to work. But a rustling noise from the bushes catches his attention. Something extremely quick, like a flash, went past his face as he wonders what it was. The speedster smacks Knox, but he manages to block it while noting that its speed was on a totally different level. But this brings a smile to his face as he guessed that this was what a hidden boss was like. The speedster was revealed to be the elite King Wasp. Knox was annoyed because this was a troublesome one, but it was not at a level that he couldn't kill. But Chitri calls out to him in a hurry as Knox turns to see her. Chitri stood in front of the elite King Wasp's attack, shielding Knox from its horror. But all Knox could think of was that even without Chitri's help, that was an attack he could either dodge or block. He wondered why she had saved him. He continued to wonder about how many people would be able to run towards a monster that suddenly appeared. Nox made sure to make use of this as well for the sake of saving her, but his face wore a different feeling as he grinds his teeth in anger. He then activates his skill, the Hour of the Genius. A flashback is seen where a young Jayatri is crying over her injured knee. A voice calls out to her and wonders why their dear Jayatri was always falling down. Another voice agrees and notes that there has never been a day that her wounds underneath are completely healed. That's what her parents always told her, that her wounds were never completely healed. But Jayatri knew that it doesn't simply apply to only her knee wounds but also her heart wounds. She wonders if they were prophesying over her previously. She then recalls the question of who do you serve from Nox the day before. Jayatri continued to think deeply about who she serves. A memory of her father came into her mind, along with the memories of her uncle killing her father and telling her that the family was now his. Her mind then went on to Nox's father while thinking about who she serves. The question that Nox asks her repeated in her head, along with his other words. We return to the present where Nox and Rona are calling out to Jayatri. Two windows appear to tell Nox that he had defeated the monster and will be given special rewards. Nox looks at her with a worried expression on his face as he tells Jayatri to hang in there for a while. He continues to tell her that it was all over now and that he'll take her back. Rona reminds him that they needed to head back to the mansion quickly. Lies is what Jayatri thought as she looked at Nox. She wonders if that was the expression of someone who's just trying to make use of her would look like. Jayatri tried to open her mouth to speak but couldn't, making her wonder why. Why does she feel a slight tremble as her vision of Nox started to blur as well as anger in his voice? Tears flow down her eyes as she closes them. Theo reads a letter in his hand and spoke out that it is indeed troubling. Rodwell informs Theo that based on their investigation, the contents of the letter are true. The Lobelia family has decided to completely cut off Miss Jayatri. Theo thought about the reason he brought Jayatri here in the first place. It was for the sake of taking over the Lobelia family since they have lost their previous head of the house and are in an unstable state. He thought that this would be the perfect chance to take over them. For example, if the situation within the family is so unstable that the successor's position in the family would be shaky, with the involvement of Rain Haffer, they should be able to bring them into submission somehow. But what if Jayatri is expelled from the family before any plans can even take place? Theo talks about how it couldn't be helped and asked Rodwell about what he thinks they should do with Jayatri. Rodwell replies that while it's regretful, if they place a maid that doesn't belong to any family beside Nox. As the scene continues, Rodwell and Theo discuss the situation regarding Jayatri's expulsion and the potential repercussions at Albion Academy. They agree to handle the matter quietly to avoid further complications. Just then, a servant bursts into the room and reports that Nox was seen carrying back a maid who had been injured during his hunt. The maid was poisoned and in critical condition. Nox had also used an expensive antidote without permission. Rodwell questions the servant about the antidote, specifically the Mantrix purifying potion, which is revealed to be a costly remedy. Theo, thinking about Nox's growing attachment to the maids, contemplates the unpredictable outcomes of personal feelings. The scene shifts to Jayatri's room, where Onu is overjoyed to see Jayatri awake. Jayatri, confused about what happened, recalls the moment Nox used the antidote and blocked the wasp attack to save her. Rona explains that Nox insisted on using the antidote, ignoring the doctor's refusal, because he didn't want Jayatri to die. Rona reassures Jayatri that the good-for-nothing side of Nox is still present. Jayatri, still uncertain about Nox's intentions, decides to pack her belongings, feeling that she doesn't deserve to be there. She takes out a precious photo of her parents from her necklace and places it alongside a letter thanking Nox for saving her life. She believes the pendant can be sold to cover the cost of the expensive antidote. With a sad expression, she prepares to leave. As Jayatri attempts to depart, Nox suddenly appears in front of her with a serious look on his face. He questions her about where she thinks she's going, leaving the situation hanging in suspense. The video concludes with a reminder to subscribe for more content and an invitation for viewers to comment on what they'd like to see in the future.